What's up, movie lovers? We're the Hills Maniacs, and as you all know, the best thing about movies is when there's a hero and a villain. Like, you can't have a hero without a villain, you can't have a villain without a hero. And looking back at some movies over the years and everything, there have been some iconic portrayals of numerous different movie villains throughout the years, played phenomenally by specific actors and that kind of stuff that just kind of live up, like, stand the test of time, basically, and, like, live up to your expectations. And, like, when you rewatch the movie, it's still just as iconic as it's always been. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. We've both made our own list of the 5 actors that we feel were perfectly cast in these roles as movie villains. And we're going to kind of go over just like each thing we liked about the specific actors, whether it's their performance or just the movie they were in, maybe, or whatever, how good they really were as those specific villains. So without further delay, let's get started. So for me personally, when I think of a movie villain that was portrayed really well by an actor, the first one that really popped into my head when I was making this list, obviously, was Heath Ledger as the Joker from The Dark Knight. Did you also have him on your list?
My favorite one.
I just think, I don't know what it was. He just did a really fantastic job, like, in that role and everything. It's unfortunate, like, that he kind of became that character in real life almost, and kind of went insane after playing it, at least is what I've heard. But in terms of, like, his on-screen performance as the Joker, I don't think there's ever going to be anybody that could really top that. It was just his mannerisms, the way he gave his all in that performance as the Joker and everything. You could tell that he was crazy just from, like, every time he's on screen. You could tell he was crazy, but also, like, the smartest guy in the room. And his portrayal of that character, I think, is what made that stand out. Even against, like, Christian Bale's Batman, he was the perfect foil for that. And this was a different kind of Joker that we've ever seen before. He was manipulative, he was scheming all the time, that kind of stuff. And that was all really well done by Heath Ledger, like, bringing that character to life and that version of the character.
I mean, with Heath Ledger as the Joker, obviously won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Of course, he was already gone at that point. But he did win the Oscar because of the performance that he gave doing this. He dedicated literally all of his time, all of his effort. You could tell that he put in the work to make this character what it was. And even scenes that he had to improvise, like the hospital scene where he's supposed to blow up the thing and the building doesn't blow up, so he turns around and keeps hitting the button. I mean, even that was just like, that is something the Joker would do. He didn't just turn around, get all angry, and do it. He made it like a silly type of thing, as if the Joker intended for that to happen.
Right.
And you don't see that all the time. Even with Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, who also won an Oscar for playing the Joker, it was a good performance. It just wasn't as impactful, I think. And I know, especially for me, like, if I quote something from the Joker, it's Heath Ledger's Joker.
Like, like the "why so serious" line and stuff. The way he, like, said that line, was really, it's kind of like chilling almost. Like, he put, like, effort into that. He made his voice grovelly, kind of, just to say that, like, "why so serious?" And yeah, like, I don't think anybody else could have played this role. And even the whole, like, Joker, like, when he's licking his lips and all that stuff, that was all just Heath Ledger doing that, because he was licking his lips to keep the prosthetics on his face from the scars, like, because the glue was coming off, I guess, or whatever they used to keep it on his face, so he had to keep licking it to get it wet. And he kind of added that into the character, and I thought that was kind of, that made him seem even more crazier, like he's got, like, a tick. But you don't really, like, notice it necessarily, that it's not really like a character flaw or anything. But like you said, all the improv and stuff that he had to do is what really brought this character to life in this particular movie, and against this version of Batman and everything.
Well, and with The Dark Knight being one of the best, if not the best, Batman movie, it's kind of hard to not choose Heath Ledger for this role, with that movie being as kind of iconic
Right.
as it is. So my next one I actually put, and he gets a lot of hate for his role in Star Wars, but I put Hayden Christensen as Anakin slash Darth Vader. He does get to finally wear the costume in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which is kind of cool. And a lot of people just didn't like his performance as Anakin Skywalker. I know Kathleen Kennedy didn't like him, but nobody liked her either. So, but for me, I thought it was a good performance. That transition from Anakin to Vader, and just seeing the emotion behind it, seeing the effects of what's actually happening. Like, he has to realize that Anakin is gone and Vader is the new, Lord of the Sith. And so Hayden Christensen plays that well. He starts off normal and then starts to, as Padme, starts to leave him and Obi-Wan turns on him. The Jedi start lying to him and he chops off Mace Windu's arm. He starts becoming that evil that he wants, and he's conflicted. That's the thing too, is that it's not just Anakin becomes Vader and that's it. Anakin doesn't want to become evil. He just doesn't realize that he's becoming evil with what he's doing. And I think Hayden Christensen personally did a great job at portraying that. But then again, I'm probably in the minority on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. He did kind of, because when you think about it, really, he's the face of Darth Vader, because throughout the rest of the Star Wars saga and everything, Darth Vader's always behind the mask until I guess Episode 6, but that was a different actor at the time because it came out first. When he's starting to transition, he seems like this grumpy child almost. It's like upset because oh, I can't be a Jedi Master and all that kind of stuff. And he puts that performance on. I don't know what it is. It makes it seem kind of childish, like he's throwing a fit, and that's why he joins the dark side. But you're right. I think he portrayed that really well. And like I was saying, he was the face of Darth Vader that we pretty much have to think about. Like when you think about whose face is behind the mask, we're going to think of Hayden Christensen if you saw that movie first before you saw Episode 4, 5, and 6. If that was your first Star Wars, and even in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, like you said.
Yep.
So he kind of had to take on that role, and that's like a big iconic role to take on, really. The human side of Darth Vader, slowly transitioning into that. I think he did a nice job with that. So the second one for me, I went with Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter in the Silence of the Lambs franchise. I mean, I've only seen the first one, The Silence of the Lambs, but there were a couple other movies after that.
We don't talk about the other one.
Yeah, where he played Hannibal Lecter. I just think his performance in that was really creepy almost. Like, he gave off that creepy vibe that character is supposed to give off, And, there's even the story of, Jodie Foster, when she first interacted with Anthony Hopkins, she was kind of creeped out or something, right?
She was, terrified of him just because of how he was acting.
Yeah. So that's how he's really good at being in that role, is, when they're just in that role all day long, really getting into it and everything. And Anthony Hopkins is just a legendary actor as it is, but I think him playing Hannibal Lecter was done really well. He gave off that creepy factor. He is technically the main villain of the movie, but he's also kind of a side villain as well as kind of helping them.
Yeah.
But even just everything he's doing, every sentence he utters out of his mouth is there's a deeper meaning to it. He's being secretive. He knows he's going to escape, and he's already plotted ahead of everybody. And Anthony Hopkins delivers that every line that he says with this sort of momentum, and it's almost surreal. It feels like he's really talking. It's not just this bland dialogue. You know what I mean? He's actually giving off this as if it's a real person talking to a detective. And the fact that there are people like this, even that are these sinister serial killers and stuff like that, I think that almost kind of resonates with the character as well when he brings that character to life. And he just, I don't know, it was just a creepy performance, and just like, even just talking all calmly and stuff, even though he just killed somebody or whatever, you know. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But like everything he says and all that stuff, his mannerisms and everything, I think Anthony Hopkins did an excellent job playing that role. And I know they've tried to have other actors play Hannibal Lecter before, but it's like the one that comes to my mind the most is Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, and that's also one of those things where when you think of Anthony Hopkins, one of the first roles that's going to pop into your head is Hannibal Lecter. And that's just how iconic that character became because of that performance. And that's one that I didn't think of for this list, so that's an interesting pick. Because, yeah, he is definitely able to deliver a character that you wouldn't think you would kind of remember, sort of. And yet he's one of the most iconic movie villains probably ever. Anthony Hopkins
people
definitely.
still dress as that character for Halloween and stuff. Even though he only wore the mask once.
True.
That they, you know, that
when they were
it's still he's an iconic character in like Halloween sort of lore and everything for like the Halloween season and stuff. Yep. But I think that's because of Anthony Hopkins' performance. Next up for me, I went with it was a tie between. I'm actually going with a tie between Ian McDiarmid as Palpatine and Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort from the Harry Potter movies. I think they both just kind of give off the presence of the character that they're supposed to be playing. So like Voldemort is meant to be this like menacing figure with no nose and kind of just creeping in the darkness and everything else. He's the Lord of Darkness, basically. And Ralph Fiennes does a nice job with that. Like the way he moves, the way he just talks and brings the character to life off of the pages of the Harry Potter books and stuff. I think he did really well with that. And even Palpatine from Ian McDiarmid, he's like the guy in the hood, the guy that's manipulating everything. He's got this ugly and like wrinkly face and everything, and his dialogue is like a scraggly voice kind of and everything else. And you know that he's the villain, even when he's just being Palpatine. He's not being the Emperor or whatever, like in the prequel trilogy and stuff. He's just playing this senator, but we know, if you've seen the other ones, that he becomes Palpatine, or he's the evil emperor. But like even in his performance just as Palpatine in those three movies, you can tell that there's something about him that's like off, you know, that he has this creepy vibe where he seems trustworthy but also seems untrustworthy, that there's these secrets to him. But yeah, I think for that, like, I think both actors did a nice job playing, because they're both meant to be these like big, you know, the villains of this entire like franchise or a big saga and everything. So the way that they both portrayed these characters, I think it's unmatched. Like even with the new Harry Potter series coming out, I don't think anybody's going to be able to top what Ralph Fiennes did as Voldemort. Even though Voldemort wasn't in every movie technically until he like actually comes back to life or whatever, or it wasn't Ralph Fiennes playing him at least, because they had like the memory of Tom Riddle and all that kind of stuff. The moment he takes center stage for the first time, you can tell that he's this like really creepy figure, and he's going to wreak havoc on Harry Potter and all the people from Hogwarts and the Wizarding World and everything else. And Ian McDiarmid, of course, playing Palpatine and stuff, you know what he becomes as he becomes the Emperor and what he's going to do to the galaxy and all that stuff. So both of those portrayals I thought were really well done.
I mean, yeah, I agree in the sense that they are well performed. It's just, for me, the reason I didn't include those two kind of on my list was because I just felt like those characters could be portrayed by anyone and it would still be the same kind of feel to it. Where you're not really getting something that impactful that you're going to remember a character. Now, yeah, you remember who Voldemort is, you remember who Palpatine is, and that's if you're fans of the series, and even if you're not, for the most part at least. But I think you would remember that no matter who played them. So that's why I didn't include them on here, but definitely, at least for Ian McDiarmid as Palpatine, when you look back at it, you know, after you watch the original trilogy and you learn who Palpatine is when he becomes the Emperor, and then you go back and watch 1, 2, and 3, knowing what's coming, and then you watch how the whole time he's been manipulating the situation in his favor, then yeah, you kind of have to understand, because if you go by what Ian McDiarmid said, he never knew at first when they started filming The Phantom Menace that the character he was playing there was the same that he played in Return of the Jedi, which was number 6. He didn't know that the Emperor and Senator Palpatine were the same person. So he kind of had two different characters that he thought he was playing, and then here, as it went on, it led into the Emperor in 5 and 6, which is, the iconic version of Palpatine. So, and then we don't talk about 9. So, yes, I mean, Ian McDiarmid definitely had to have that, because he didn't know it was the same character, and yet he was still playing that manipulative kind of character. I think you're right. They're both iconic roles. I just felt like they could have been portrayed probably by anybody else, and it might have still been the same sort of feeling that you get for it. But definitely good picks for those. So my next one, I actually did sort of a double as well, not because it's two different characters from two different movies, but because it's actually two people that played sort of the same character. And I'm going with Ghostface from the original Scream, which would be Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard. And I just think technically they're two different characters, so Billy Loomis and Stu Macher. And watching their characters throughout the entire thing, and then of course they both take turns being Ghostface. Just Skeet Ulrich's character in Scream, you can just tell, when you watch these types of movies, you tend to get a feel for certain characters. And even now, knowing, that he's Ghostface, you still go back in and you watch it and you pay attention the whole time. You can tell he's going to turn out to be the bad guy of the movie. You just get that feeling watching it. And if you don't get that the first time, then when you go back and watch it, you'll realize why maybe you should have gotten that, because there's clues throughout the whole thing. And they both just kind of portray these characters where Billy is the main kind of ringleader of this, while Stu is more of the I don't want to say idiotic, but the goofy sidekick,
right?
But still serious enough to make an impact on the plot of the movie. And just the way it happens, and then you find out the whole plot, the whole backstory, why they're doing what they're doing. And then, of course, Matthew Lillard goes on and plays Shaggy in Scooby-Doo, so, he still brings that kind of goofy personality to Stu, while also making it still a serious sort of slasher film, which I think for those two characters, you have to kind of have a good mix. They have to work well together, with Stu and Billy, but they also have to be able to make it iconic enough for you to want to keep watching it and want to know, what happens with those characters. And even if you don't really care about them, they still give that performance. And I know Matthew Lillard's performance as Stu was one of his most iconic roles, I think. Other than Shaggy, of course.
Even though it was only a one-off.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You don't really hear anything else about him as much as you do, when you think about Scream, you think of Matthew Lillard. So it was just, for me, those two, because they're kind of both Ghostface, they're two separate characters, but the same, villain. So I just kind of threw them both together. I just thought it was both good performances by both, and Skeet Ulrich is just creepy in this movie anyways, so that works.
And I think that's what really works about, the movie itself works to as a nice mystery anyways, like who is actually the ghost face. It could be anyone you're seeing on screen. So like any of those actors and actresses playing those characters, it could have been anybody. But I think what worked about it turning out to be both of them is that these are two just basically regular dudes throughout the whole movie. Like they're just regular, like I think was it high school or college students, whatever
High school,
they were.
I think, yeah.
Like you said, Stu is just like a idiot. He's an idiot pretty much, and he's joking around and everything. He's childish and stuff, and that's what really works about that reveal is that it is these two specific characters. And because these two actors were chosen to play those characters, that's kind of where you can, or it kind of throws you off a little bit, like, oh, it was this bumbling idiot of a character that's So they did that really well. They picked the right people, especially like you said, Stu and Skeet Ulrich and everything playing Billy Loomis. I think they picked the right actors for that. I mean, I guess you could have picked anybody that would be like these joking, comical, just regular, average people to play those roles. You could have probably picked anybody, but I think it's because it was just those actors, and it was just Matthew Lillard is just like he's a funny dude anyways, especially from his performance in Scooby-Doo. I think it's that they kind of had almost like a friendly face, I guess, or an unexpected sort of look about them where you wouldn't suspect them as the killers, and that's what really works for that reveal later on.
So for my next one, I actually went with this guy right here, Loki, Tom Hiddleston. Loki is just one of my favorite movie villains anyways, just because he is the god of mischief. He is supposed to be like serious, but also he can do whatever he wants, kind of. Like, you never know what you're going to get from Loki. You don't know if you can trust him. You don't know if he's going to turn on you. And Thor learns that numerous times. A lot of the other people learn that numerous times. The Loki series on Disney Plus is one of my favorite Marvel TV series. It is just a great show overall. And Tom Hiddleston's performance as Loki, even though he originally auditioned for Thor, I think we're better off having him as Loki. He's just able to bring that character to life. He's able to show that mischievous side, while also, when he needs to be, he can be serious. He can be that god that he needs to be, at certain points, while also being the villain. And of course, later on, he's obviously not the villain anymore, but he still starts off as a villain, so that's why I included him in this. But I just think the way Tom Hiddleston portrays Loki is just one of my favorite movie villains of all time.
I think it's also like his voice and stuff too. Like he had like the perfect voice, like British voice,
right,
to pull off for that character. And like even when he's angry and everything, his voice like cracks and all that kind of stuff. And you just feel all that in his performance and everything. I think they made the right choice not making him Thor, because when they flip-flopped the two of them, because I think Chris Hemsworth was going to play Loki originally.
I don't know on that, but I know Tom Hiddleston auditioned for Thor.
Flipping that around and making him play Loki, I think really worked out. Up next for me is actually Andy Serkis as Gollum in the Lord of the Rings movies.
That's a good one.
I just think, especially him like mocapping the character and everything, like he didn't just like voice the character, because it's like Gollum obviously isn't real, but like I mean he's real in the movie. I mean, but like he's playing a CGI character, but he's not just doing the voice of the CGI character. He's doing all the motions and everything else. I think that's what that's a good range for an actor to do, like that kind of stuff, and he does that really well. Every little movement where he's down on all fours and stuff to like crawl as Gollum, like you see all of that. It almost makes it feel human in a way, which I guess he technically was before he got corrupted by the ring and everything, but it makes it all like stand out compared to like all the other actors were really great in their roles in that movie as well, but just I think Andy Serkis stands out among all of them and can really stand up with all of them as well. Like there's a lot of like Ian McKellen's in this movie, legendary actor and everything, but I think his performance can be right up there with all of those ones as well, just because all the effort he puts into it. He does the voice of Gollum. Like he makes
Yep.
his. I think he even. I saw in an interview or something one time. He said he like had to drink something to like get his voice to be that like. I want to say like scraggly or whatever the word is for that, but like. Where it's like that, Gollum, that kind of thing. He's like choked up and everything. He put that much effort into it where he was willing to drink something to make his throat dry, kind of, to play that role. I think that what made the performance really good, like he brought the character of Gollum to life. Like that character is on the screen. Like you don't even see Andy Serkis. Like you can see, like, yeah, that's Elijah Wood, that kind of thing. And if you see him in something else, you know it's him. But when you see like Andy Serkis in something else, you may not have even known that he played Gollum. Like that's how good it was of a performance.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely one of the most iconic characters, not just from Lord of the Rings, but just in general. And I think being able to take that motion capture and kind of be like the person that, in a way, started that or like made it famous for doing Gollum like that, and then taking it to like Planet of the Apes and playing Caesar,
Right.
and then other projects that he's done where he's used that motion capture to be able to do that. You change your voice. He did it for Snoke as well in Star Wars. So to be able to do that and have all these different characters kind of like in your head, and that you can just like flip to them at any given time. He's done Gollum's voice so much now that he can just like turn into it and talk to himself like he did as Gollum without needing any like rehearsal or anything now, because he's done it so much. When filming six movies with that voice, you tend to start learning how to do that. But he's just really good at taking that and really making it something different.
Right, and I don't think anybody else could have pulled that off either. Like you could get anybody to play that role. I just think his effort that he put into becoming that character for real, I think, is what made it like top notch in my opinion.
Yeah, it's one thing to just voice a character. It's another thing to become the character.
Right.
And it's sort of the same thing we said with Heath Ledger and the Joker. Like he, unfortunately, in real life, sort of got that mindset and became that character. Andy Serkis is doing it as well with multiple of his roles. Taking them and actually wanting to be that character and get into character with it. There was a scene in The Hobbit where him and Martin Freeman were filming when they were talking in the cave before Bilbo takes the ring. And I remember you just see the clip of like Andy Serkis up on the rocks, and he's just sitting there, and he's got that weird costume on that they put on to to CGI it. And he's got the little dots all over him and stuff to make it what it is. But he's talking as Gollum, and he's just holding on to the rocks, and it was just like that's the work that he put in for that, and that's why I agree 100%. I wish I had thought of him to put him on here because that is definitely one of the best movie villain performances of all time.
Right, and I think it works too, like that they didn't just make it like an animated character or CGI character or whatever. The mocap and all that, like being an actual person doing those motions and everything else, I think is what made the character really work. And honestly, he's probably the most complex character in the whole movie. And that was all because of Andy Serkis' performance and everything. And you get all of that when you're watching the character and his progression or whatever, or regression back into being possessed by the ring again and stuff. You get all of that. And it doesn't just feel like the other actors are talking to an animated character like we see in other movies. They were talking to Andy Serkis and he was talking back, but as Gollum, so it's like, that made it more real, I guess. And finally, for me, you might also have this one, I'm not sure. I went with Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin in Spider-Man 2002. You also had that?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, when you think...
and No Way Home, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. I think it's even more so in No Way Home. I don't know what it is about him. Like, I don't know... that was like the perfect person to cast as
Yep.
Green Goblin at the time. I think maybe nowadays you could maybe have even had like something like maybe Bill Skarsgård could play that role now or something. Just because
Or like
you have
Woody
to have
Harrelson
that
or
person that
somebody.
kind of like almost has that sinister like smile to
Yep.
it. Like even his like they said he wore like different teeth depending on when he was playing when he was talking as the Green Goblin versus talking as Norman Osborn. His teeth were flat and perfect as Norman Osborn, and they're like pointy and stuff when he's talking as the Goblin because he has that split personality
Yep.
thing. And even that too, like where he's talking to himself in the mirror, he's talking like where it looks like he is talking to the Green Goblin, but it's just him talking to himself between his split personalities. All of that was really well portrayed by Willem Dafoe. It all just like really worked really well to bring that character of the Green Goblin to life against Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. And I don't think at the time there could have been anybody else that really portrayed that character perfectly as he did.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where when you think about the Green Goblin, you think about, what it would kind of look like the creepy, like, goblin looking figure. And then you picture somebody playing that character, at least for me, and of course he did play him, but Willem Dafoe definitely fits that, kind of, and just a lot of what he put into that character is what made it what it was. They tried again with sort of the Green Goblin in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And it didn't really go as planned because we don't talk about that movie. But in No Way Home, even when they bring him back as Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin,
he went right back.
He's a
into that
lot
role.
more sinister in No Way Home than he was in the original Spider-Man.
That's
Because
true.
in the original Spider-Man, like the part, so in No Way Home, he's taken from the Tobey Maguire universe as Norman Osborn and brought in from whatever point he was at in that movie. And so at that point, he was still fully evil. He wasn't Norman Osborn again, asking Peter not to tell Harry that he was Norman, but he was the Goblin at that point. And that's who was brought in, and he just did, like, a lot more work for this character in No Way Home. And you wouldn't expect this from a Spider-Man movie of all things, is for a character to kind of stand out like that. But I know, back in the 2002, right, when that movie came out,
I think so. 2002,
there weren't
2001,
many
something like that.
like movie villains that you're like, oh, I'm gonna remember him. At least not for me, because I was still sort of a
Right.
kid then. But Green Goblin was definitely one of those characters that is like, that guy's kind of cool, even though he's the villain. But like,
Yeah.
just
Well.
thinking about him and like that performance from Norman Osborn or from Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn was what gave it that kind of feel to it. And then watching, like you said, when he's talking to himself, because he has that conversation sort of like he hears the Goblin talking in his head, and you can see him looking in the mirror. It shows one side where he's Norman Osborn and one side where he's the Goblin, and they're looking back and forth, so he's talking to himself basically. But and like you said with the teeth, you can tell like Norman doesn't want to do this, but the Goblin does. Like, Norman doesn't want to be evil, he wants to be Norman Osborn, but the Goblin is stronger and more powerful in taking that over. So that kind of split personality in a way, not many actors can do that where they have that, and that's something that Willem Dafoe was definitely able to bring to the table for this, was just being able to do both sides of this character instead of having to have maybe somebody else fill in to talk to. He's just basically talking to himself.
Both. He was speaking into a mirror, so like that's how they would have been able to film that, I guess.
Yep.
But I also like the fact that he fit right back into that role. It's as if he never left playing that character. Like when he comes in No Way Home playing the Green Goblin. And he did the same thing there. Like he has the split personality. You can tell sometimes, like when he's talking as Norman, he sounds normal, but then like later on in the movie when he transitions back, he was actually tricking everybody or something. Like if you pay attention to the teeth, you can almost see that like he's actually been the Goblin like the whole time or something. Or at one point he actually switched and nobody really noticed that he became, or that he was the Green Goblin. So like him just transitioning right back into the character as if he never left, I thought was also really cool. And it brought the character right back to life the same way it was in the original Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
Even though it's all these years later, like just the fact that Willem Dafoe was able to get right back into it as if he never left, it's that was really well done, I feel like. And if they had tried to do anybody else as the Green Goblin, like just to have a Green Goblin in the MCU, I don't think it would have worked. But there you go, guys. That was our list of 5 actors that we feel were perfectly cast as movie villains. We might maybe do another one down the road if we feel that there were more performances that were really well, because obviously pretty much every movie in existence has some kind of villain and hero to it, whether or not they're actually super villains or just like a regular person that is considered the villain. So we might do a follow-up to this someday, but let us know what you guys think down in the comments. Who would you have put on this list if you were doing this kind of video? And who should we have said maybe that was maybe better than some of these actors? Let us know all that down in the comments. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more, and check out everything else that we have going on this channel. Thank you for watching the video, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.